V2PTE Academic. We are providing online PTE coaching and monthly practice test. You can also stay connected with us. Facebook, Instagram and Telegram. For more information visit our WhatsApp on given number. Subscribe our YouTube channel and press the bell icon for more updates.
Everyone is interested in improving their diet. Adding grains is one of the easiest ways. Many people in the United States have a growing concern about nutrition, so grains are often served in restaurants. And many grains are now available in grocery stores too. Though for some, you still have to go to health food stores. You can stock up when you go, though, because uncooked grains keep a long time. You'll find that grains are easy to prepare. Many grains are as simple to cook as spaghetti. Barley, for instance, is just cooked in salted water. Remember, though, whole grain barley, the most nutritious kind, never will get as tender as spaghetti, no matter how long it's cooked. Grain-based salads are easy, too. Just use grains left over from a hot meal. You can even put together a grain salad hours before you need it, since grains don't wilt like lettuce does. But to get back to health factors, all grains are nutritious and many have special benefits. Barley has very little fat. Some experts believe that it may even reduce cholesterol levels. Jasmine rice is also low in fat, and it has a bonus in its wonderful aroma, a very special fragrance.
V2PT
This simulation shows what you might see if you were orbiting a black hole. The light and position of background stars around the hole are distorted by its gravity, and they seem to spin around. On the right, the constellation Orion appears to approach the event horizon, the boundary from which nothing can escape. Orion's stars look like they become separated and get spun around. Once the hole has passed by, Orion reappears on the left and looks normal again. Users can also experiment with different scenarios. This is what you might see if you were travelling towards a black hole, with rocket engines slowing your descent. Another simulation mimics freefall into a hole. In the middle, the light of the entire universe appears to be concentrated in a bright ring.
V2PT.
Indeed, the library. We've all been to a historic library. We've all enjoyed the smell of a historic library. But what is it and what does it mean? When at UCL Center for Sustainable Heritage, we've recently been asked to assess the environment at another historic library at St. Paul's Cathedral, the Wren Library, an incredible place. And it has such an intensive smell of old books. And we were also asked, for the first time really, I was actually quite taken aback by the brief, we were asked, whatever you do, please preserve the smell. It's so important to our audience. It's so important how people perceive the library. So that was quite an important message in our research. And indeed, smell is an important way of how we communicate with the environment. This piece of research was done by an advertising company, because advertisers are so interested in how we interact with each other and the environment. And we see that the majority of people use sight, obviously, to interact with the environment. But on the second place, we see that smell is also very, very important.
V2PT.
In today's lecture, I'm going to talk about changes in air pollution since the middle of the last century and what has created these changes. So, by the 1950s, air pollution was very visible, with frequent thick black fogs known as smogs in many large cities around the world. The main source of this pollution was from factories, and it caused severe health problems. For example, a particularly severe smog in London in 1952 caused over 4,000 deaths. Obviously, something had to be done. And in 1956, a Clean Air Act was introduced in Britain. This addressed the pollution from factories, and the smog soon disappeared. However, as you know, these days air pollution is still a big issue. The main difference between now and the 1950s is that you can't see it, it's invisible. Also, the main source of pollution now is from cars and lorries, and although these don't produce visible signs, this air pollution is still a significant risk to health. And one of the key factors in the rise of this type of pollution is that we have all become much more vehicle dependent. There are far more cars and lorries, trains and planes than in the 1950s, and this is now the main source of air pollution around the world.
V2PT.
This simulation shows what you might see if you were orbiting a black hole. The light and position of background stars around the hole are distorted by its gravity, and they seem to spin around. On the right, the constellation Orion appears to approach the event horizon, the boundary from which nothing can escape. Orion's stars look like they become separated and get spun around. Once the hole has passed by, Orion reappears on the left and looks normal again. Users can also experiment with different scenarios. This is what you might see if you were traveling towards a black hole, with rocket engines slowing your descent. Another simulation mimics free fall into a hole. In the middle, the light of the entire universe appears to be concentrated in a bright ring.
V2PT.
Well, it's about whether you can achieve a win-win solution, whether you can achieve economic growth which brings wealth in order to cut poverty without damaging biodiversity. And the argument is that if you want to protect biodiversity, you have to focus on that as a goal, but if you do that, you run the risk of hurting the poor, and you also run the risk of inconveniencing or reducing economic growth. And we're used in developed countries, industrialized countries, to seeing this argument, this axis argued about, with, let us say, a government wishing to start drilling for oil in place X, which is full of wildlife, and the Wildlife Conservation Society is urging them not to, on the grounds that it's a wilderness refuge. We're used to that debate. What I'm saying is that in the developing world there's a third axis, and it's quite a complex one.
V2PT.
The skoog is a new, universally accessible musical instrument. It's designed for use by children or adults with special needs, or in fact for use by anyone. It's soft, it's easy to play, it's robust, and it can be customised to suit anyone's abilities. The skoog helps children with special needs by allowing them to get involved in making music themselves. It's an instrument that they can play and they can take ownership of and start creating their own sounds and music. Traditionally, instruments are the shape and size and made of the materials they are because of the sound that they need to make. If you want something to sound like a plucked string, you need a string and it needs to be under tension. Whereas with the skoog, because it's a mixture of software and a sensor, then the computer can handle making the sound, and so we can design an object that's designed to be touched and designed to be played with. In developing the skoog and actually working with kids in the schools and in the classroom, it's really helped us make the skoog something that's usable by the children themselves. They've informed us massively on how it needs to work, and they've given their opinion on colours and design, and just the feedback that they've given to us has been just marvellous. It's just so enriching, and it's really inspiring to actually work with these kids, particularly when you can provide them with an ability to start playing their own music as opposed to just taking part through listening and listening to other musicians.
V2PT.
Language is an essential part of our lives that we often take for granted. With it, we can communicate our thoughts and feelings, lose ourselves in novels, send text messages, and greet friends. It's hard to imagine being unable to turn thoughts into words. But if the delicate web of language networks in your brain became disrupted by stroke, illness, or trauma, you could find yourself truly at a loss for words. This disorder, called aphasia, can impair all aspects of communication. People who have aphasia remain as intelligent as ever. They know what they want to say, but can't always get their words to come out correctly. They may unintentionally use substitutions called paraphasias, switching related words like saying dog for cat, or words that sound similar, such as house for horse. Sometimes their words may even be unrecognizable.
V2PT.
The behaviors inherent in hibernation, like going 5 weeks without sleep or dropping to near freezing body temperatures, would be potentially fatal to non-hibernating species like us. To find out how hibernators are able to do this, researchers turned their attention to those animals' genomes. So far, they've discovered that hibernation is controlled by genes that turn off and on in unique patterns throughout the year, fine-tuning the hibernator's physiology and behavior. For example, ground squirrel, bear, and dwarf lemur studies have revealed that these animals are able to turn on the genes that control fat metabolism precisely when they need to use their fat stores as fuel to survive long periods of fasting. And the genes in question are present in all mammals, which means that researchers could study hibernating mammals to see how their unique control of physiology might help humans. Understanding how hibernators deal with reduced blood flow could lead to better treatments for protecting the brain during a stroke. Figuring out how these animals avoid muscle deterioration might improve the lives of bedridden patients. And studying how hibernating animals control their weight with ease could illuminate the relationship between metabolism and weight gain in humans.
V2PT.
What is consciousness? Can an artificial machine really think? Does the mind just consist of neurons in the brain, or is there some intangible spark at its core? For many, these have been vital considerations for the future of artificial intelligence. But British computer scientist Alan Turing decided to disregard all these questions in favor of a much simpler one. Can a computer talk like a human? This question led to an idea for measuring artificial intelligence that would famously come to be known as the Turing test. In the 1950 paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, Turing proposed the following game. A human judge has a text conversation with unseen players and evaluates their responses. To pass the test, a computer must be able to replace one of the players without substantially changing the results. In other words, a computer would be considered intelligent if its conversation couldn't be easily distinguished from a human's. Turing predicted that by the year 2000, machines with 100 megabytes of memory would be able to easily pass his test. But he may have jumped the gun. Even though today's computers have far more memory than that, few have succeeded, and those that have done well focused more on finding clever ways to fool judges than using overwhelming computing power.
V2PT